Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Global Skills Showcase hosted by the Coaches Site. I'm Ted Soikinen. I'm the Director of Player Development here in HC Locomotive in Yaroslavl, Russia. We are part of the KHL, and I work directly with our KHL, MHLA, and our MHLB teams. These are our top three teams in our organization, and I'm also the development director for all the younger teams from our KHL all the way down to our under 7 teams. So far in the 4 years I've been here in Locomotive, we've won 2 of our junior cups, the Karloff Cups, and 2 World Junior Championships with our guys. 13 of our guys have gotten drafted. 4 guys have signed that were undrafted have signed NHL contracts, are playing the NHL today. And I've been a regular presenter at the Russian Hockey Federation's coaching conference, as well as a World Hockey Forum speaker. On top of that, I have a degree now in neuroscience. I finished that up this season. So the reason why I got into this was trying to get into the dimension of the brain to start to understand how we pick up skill, how we can actually develop our hockey IQ and make a better environment for our players. Along with that, I also have my education through USA Hockey as well as the Swedish Hockey Federation. It's been a long journey. I'm originally from Duluth, Minnesota, back in the States, grew up and played there. Played up in the USHL, Minnesota High School Championships, and was a D1 hockey player up in University of Alaska Anchorage. Went on, moved over here to Europe, had a journey through Sweden, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands as a player, and ended up me and my wife and settling down in Sweden, where I've been there since 2008, coaching in Sweden, Norway, Switzerland, Germany, and now here in Russia, which it looks like our new home is in Russia, not to the excitement of my wife, but the hockey's good, the life is good, so you can't complain too much. My presentation today is going to be about cognition and variability in skill training for players. I'm very interested in the brain, and I'm very interested in trying to get the players to actually start to think on the ice, and not just in a technical side of things, but actually be skillful so that they're able to take their stuff that we work on in practice straight to the games. One of the things that I've always done about, and my main quote is to myself every single day, is I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think. And that's my philosophy, is I want to see the player. I have to see the player for who they are, and I can't let them mimic me. I may be able to do the moves. I may be able to have the understanding of why we're doing stuff. But the thing is, I need them to think, because at the end of the day, they are the ones, no matter what age they are the ones that are being on the ice, and they're having to play for themselves. So every day that I go into the office, whenever we draw up practice plans or whatnot, what we're going to teach, everything has to be based on making them think. And when we get into that, this is our cognitive development area. So if we're going to make them think, we got to turn on their brains, right? Because in hockey, you can be as technically skilled as you want to be. And we see a lot of players that are very technically skilled at the young ages and today in the NHL. But the biggest thing that we have to see that separates everybody is what's going on between the ears. So with the cognitive development, what we're always trying to do is have them remember things. We want them problem solving, and we want them to be making decisions on a regular basis. We do this from when we're born. We learn how to crawl, we learn how to walk, and we're not really being taught all the time how to do that stuff. We're just exploring it ourselves, and our brains are picking up the movement variations that we have, and then we connect those later on with our motor skills. So being able to have the cognitive side of it is the one that's going to give that player his personality, his authenticity on the ice, in the locker room, and in life itself. So when we talk about the brain, it's the epicenter of everything. Everything happens there. Our movement, our decision making, our tactical thinking, our individual tactics on the ice, our perception and action, our technical, our game situation, and our positional thinking. So everything that we do, everything that we teach the player, everything is going on through the brain first. So then it's going to be acted out through the body. So we must understand what's happening in that brain, and like the small areas within it, to make ourselves more reliable as a coach and more of an asset towards them to be able to help them develop more. So when we're looking at the brain, to simplify things for everybody here, we got our 2 hemispheres, as everybody knows. Our left side of the brain is where all of our analysis is going to be, our logic, our ideas, our facts, our math, and our training. It's also going to be our right-hand control. And this part here, when we're talking about skill training, we talk about like how to shoot, how to skate, how to pass, how to do all like the technical movements that we always speak about there. You look on Instagram or you see on YouTube, and this is happening in this area because it's a lot of dictated, right? So it's a more of a fact side of things. So you're trying to get the fact about how to take a forward stride, how to shoot the puck. And this is happening there on the left side of our brain. Where our right side is, it's more of that creativity, that intuition, the arts, the feeling, the imagination, and our holistic thought, being able to see the world as a whole and see the game as a whole, and being able to put the stuff together and see how it's going to mix and match. So when we're running our practices, we want to be able to actually take both sides of the hemisphere and we want to put them together. They have to work together. If you're looking on Twitter and you're looking on different areas, we see a lot of people saying that the players aren't as creative anymore, or they're passing, they don't feel the game. And the problem is that sometimes we've broken the game down so much that it's just happening on the left side. Everything's on the left side, so everything's a fact to the player, where we want to be able to open this up and get that creativity. So your practice plans, your practice exercises, they must include both. So this is going to come into the part where you as a coach have to ask the next question: how do you view the game? There's two ways to view it. One is technical based, right? So being able to say, this is how you skate, this is the proper stride, this is the proper shot, and just ingraining that into a player. The problem with a hockey technique is that the execution of the decision means to exploit the technique has to have context. So a technique is just a technique, but if it has no context to the player, he can't envision it, then it really doesn't resonate. It doesn't really set inside the player for him to be able to transfer it later. This is what happens when we have our isolated trains without opponents. We're training the execution of the technique. We're not teaching the player and letting them explore the technique inside of a game where they're having to make decisions, where they're having to be cognitive about what they have. And what we usually see here is where the players are in complete control. You can see them from step one trying to do a drill, and by the 10th rep, doing the same drill over and over again, they look a lot better. And this is usually based off of our teachings. And so what we want to be able to do is look at a different view of it, and this is the cognitive based. So if you have skill does not mean that you have technique, and technique does not mean that you have skill. So it's back and forth, right? So having technique doesn't automatically translate into having a skillful performance. Skill performance is when the skill is adaptable to the play. That's your hockey IQ. Can you read the play and then apply a technique? And that's where you're going to become skillful at. Applying a technique is always going to change though, because the context of the game continually changes. And that's where we have to prepare the athletes in order to be able to read and decide about what they see and what technique that they might use in something like that. But to be able to do that, they can't mimic us as a coach. They can't just sit there and just have it step by step by step, because one step that's a little bit off throws away the whole technique, if you guys understand what I'm trying to say there. So to be skillful, you have to be able to read and decide and then pull out whatever skill or technique you're going to use in that area. So there's a difference between having skill and there's a difference between having technique, and how you view the game is how you're going to teach it. Now, when we get inside of the brain, we have these three things: chemicals, cells, and theories. These three things in the brain will tell us about what we're going to be able to prolong and actually get inside of a guy's head that's going to be able to sit there and grow. So when we're talking about chemicals, the first chemical is dopamine. Dopamine's that nice little hit. Sometimes you get it when you're scrolling through Instagram, you get a new like, or you get a message from somebody that you want, and that's that dopamine hit where you're feeling excited. It happens in practice where the dopamine, if he's doing the same thing over and over and over again, the dopamine doesn't kick in. But if he's being challenged, the dopamine kicks in, and that's our optimal learning environment for the player. It's a little bit challenging, but at the same time, they're able to see the reward after it. They're able to produce something. Where if they just continually go into a route that they're just going to be going around a cone, around another cone, and around a cone and shooting, yes, they may look like they're getting better, but the dopamine isn't there, which means the learning aspect of the environment inside the brain isn't happening as well. The next one that we have is BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This is something that is in conjunction with dopamine that's happening inside the brain. Once again, we have these sweet spots when a player is being challenged. Now, the thing about being challenged is this is where you as a coach can come into play, right? So you're going to be controlling the player's rest work ratio. And you're going to be trying to, if you want to have the optimal level of learning happening, you want to have that optimal challenge level where you're getting that dopamine hit and you're getting the BDNF happening. But the BDNF doesn't kick in unless the training is 70% of maximum heart rate. And if you're anything over that, then all of a sudden it's not, the BDNF doesn't kick in anymore. It's stopped. So now we're losing that optimal learning environment. And what happens with both of these is that when we are allowed to let the players just do a drill, be challenged on it, find different solutions, decision making, all of a sudden we have to be able to let them rest. And this is where you as a coach can jump in and talk to them, give them cues, ask them questions. What did they see? What did they do? Why did they do this? And they're going to be able to give you the answers. Well, what's happening is that you're starting to get that feeling inside of them where they're starting to understand why they did stuff. And that's that settling aspect, where you're going to let them rest for 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes. And that settling is going to start to happen in the brain, where it's going to start to be able to solidify inside of there, because now they're starting to understand what they did, why they did it, and how they could actually do it better the next time if that situation were to happen. And what happens next is you got the grid cells. The grid cells are very easily explained as far as if you've ever been to a new city and been driven around, you have no idea where you are. You're just a passenger and you're trying to figure out where you're at. But then all of a sudden you start seeing a McDonald's. Okay, now I know I have to turn left at the McDonald's and turn right at the mall, and I'll be at my hotel. Well, the same thing happens in a game for these players. If the situation is inside of an area where they're going to be playing at, like if we're inside of a zone coming out of the corner, zone entry, it doesn't matter. And somewhere in these kind of senses, now all of a sudden you're starting to get that game transfer. And what's happening inside the brain is starting to map it out. And when we're starting to map it out, we're starting to get the head direction cells and the place cells to actually start combining into each other. And what these guys do is that the head cells, they're located in the thalamus, and they serve as our direction for where we're going to be heading at. They're our compass in our head. The place cells are in the hippocampus, the location of landmarks in the environment. So that could be like if that's where the face-off dot is compared to where the hash marks are. They're starting to understand these different areas where they're at. And so that they're going to be able to, start to pull the environment inside their head. So they're getting a map of the rink, where the puck was, where the players were, from different situations from the past. And they're going to be able to bring that back into their game later on, and taking those skills that we've taught them through decision-making. And they're going to be able to exploit that inside of a practice. Basically what the grid cell theory is giving the players spatial awareness. And this is the biggest thing that we need to have in hockey, because we're always talking about find the space, manipulate the space, exploit the space. So if we're going to be able to, if we're always talking about this, and this is going into our IQ side of it, then we need to be able to put these guys in environments that are going to be able to exploit it, and they're going to be able to solidify it inside their brain so that they can pick it out later and be able to use it. So one of the things that we like to do here, and I work with all my players, whether they're private or whether with the club, is we always like to prime the brain, right? So we don't just go on the ice and give them drills just to go and do drills. What we're trying to do for them is get their brain working actively to start the practice. So there's no minuscule, minimal warm up that you're going to do where it's just going around in a circle and shooting pucks. We're trying to activate the brain so that we're priming it so that they're ready to start thinking when we get on. We're having Gregory Denisenko, he plays for the Florida Panthers now, and Donut Stalnoff, who plays for Torpedo in the KHL. What we're having with these guys is a cognitive exercise. So we're going to use our grid cell theory in our place and head cells. And what we're trying to do is put him in a situation where he knows he's been at before. So this is replicating being in the slot. The task of this is that he cannot look at the net. He cannot look at the pass coming from Donut. And he's got to keep his eyes on a third guy that's outside the camera view who's feeding him information. He's asking him math questions. So he's got to be able to shoot. And what the other task was, either go top, bottom, or around the net. He could choose whichever one he wanted, but he had to hit corners. all at the same time answering these math questions that were happening at the same time that the puck was coming to him and shooting. One of the interesting things that was part of this was that after we asked these guys and they all went through it, and we went through a few different kind of repetitions, and the different repetitions where he was standing on one foot, now his body was faced a different way. You just put him in awkward movements, starting positions to see what their movement capacity was. And the thing was that he was saying that he understood, he could just envision where the net was. But the hard part was trying to get the math and everything else happening in his brain. And his answer was that it feels like a game, like when you're driving down and you have the puck and everybody's calling for your name or everybody's calling for the puck, and you're having to figure out what the solution is in front of you, yet try to figure out which teammate is calling for it. So it's a very good cognitive primer before we get going into stuff, and that's what we like to do. Another one that we like to do on the ice, it's simple. We've done it since we were kids. It's called tag. And here what we do is we put this one in the corner. You can put it anywhere on the ice, but we just marked out an area, and it's one-on-one. All right. Both players have the puck. And the object is you have to tag the other guy, but you cannot lose your puck when you tag him. You can't leave your puck somewhere. You have to go after him. And what we're looking for in this is that you're trying to see all the different elements, the different skills that they're going to use. You can say it's a stick handling thing, but what we're looking at, we see open hips, we see different turns, we see different edges, we see toe drags, we see all kinds of skill acquisitions, skill applications that are happening. And this is what we're trying to get from these guys. And the best part is, like, if we could actually, zoom in on this, was that their faces were just brimming. You could just see teeth because they're having so much fun at this. And it gets a little bit challenging because, it's a workout, but at the same time, they're having to do everything and, try to get away. It's just a simple game like we play when we were kids. You play tag with a friend. But the different part about this is that you're training so many different elements. You're training their vision, trying to see what their opponent is doing to be able to do and manipulate him to get somewhere else. If we watch this again, you'll see the guy in the red, Vladimir Lukashevich. His eyes are always glued on Ivan's hips and his hands area, because every time where the hips are going to move, it's a general idea about what the feet are going to do next. So he's going off the different directions. So we're trying to teach that vision to be able to see that when we get into the game and just be a natural reflex. And this one here, a very cognitive drill. I'll try to explain it the best I can, but you got 4 guys on the outside. All right. They have one puck. Their puck must continuously move between them. It cannot stop. You cannot stick handle it. It's got to move. You got to find the open person. On the inside of this box, you have a one-on-one. One guy's offensive, one guy's defensive. If the defensive guy takes a puck away from the offensive guy, he becomes a new offensive guy. Now, the offensive guy is also able to use any of the 4 guys on the outside. So he can use his vision. So now you can turn it into a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-1, because if his puck moves out, the guys on the outside can actually move it so he's able to get in a better position for a reception. So what you're trying to teach here with these guys is a lot of cognitive action, a lot of decision-making happening. And what you really want to be able to see is the vision of the guys. And I'll stop it on a couple things here, like we can point out and what we actually bring back to the players and asking them questions. So everybody's just moving and going around. You can see the outside puck moving, the inside puck's moving. But now we start to see, as it starts to get a little bit more involved, we start seeing hesitations. Here's a hesitation by the green here, Guerra. All right. So in a perfect world, like I said, we are able to move the puck in any direction to the free man that's open. So we have one guy with the pass here, going to be handling it inside back into the middle. But Guerra has 2 other options to make a pass in our triangle here, right? He's got a guy in the yellow. He's got a guy in the green here. But he decides to hold it. And you can see the way that his body position is. So like this is another area that we like to talk about with our players. Where's your body position? How can you be optimal for everybody? His stick isn't really in an optimal position to make that pass quickly. It'd be a quicker pass down, but his head is geared more towards the yellow, but also looking over here at the other green, his other partner. So what happens is when he's sitting there, he sits and he holds. He makes his pass over to the green there. Now all of a sudden, Artem, after he makes his pass, the green guy here that just made the pass, Guerra, his whole body turns. His stick is now not open for a return pass, and his body's looking at the other puck. Now Artem sits there, and he's sitting there wondering who he's going to pass to, which also starts for another delay, and now the puck moves again. So like what we like to take, we take these videos and we go through it with our players, and we're asking them what they saw, why they moved. So we're having them to give us feedback back to us, because we don't understand what's going on in their brains. And the only way we can get that is if we actually ask them. And when we ask them, they have to give us an answer. And it's not a one word answer, I forgot, or something else. Why did you do it? What were you looking at? And what could you do better next time and to be in a better position? And this is just all part of that feedback loop that we're trying to get with our players. And we take this one, and now this is going to look like chaos, and it's supposed to be chaos. It's not supposed to be just rhythmic. We don't want rhythm. We want a little bit of chaos when we're doing stuff. So it's making the players think, decide, and understand. It's the same drill, but the different part now is that the guys that are on the outside, they're able to move around. They don't get to sit in the same positions. So now they got to move, which means now all the vision by everybody, the communication by everybody has to take it up another level. So when we were watching this, like I warn you already, it's going to look like chaos, but you're going to start to see different patterns happening. You're going to see different communications happening with them. And the best part is if you're watching their heads are always moving somewhere, which is keeping us to have their eyes up and find solutions to the puck and get the puck moving. And you got the guys in the middle who's working on puck protection. He's working on manipulating the defender, getting away from him. So what you're doing is instead of having something static, we're putting them in an area that they're going to be able to be like inside of a game, because there's going to be a lot of chaos in the game, and we're going to try to have to manipulate space, get give and goes. The second part is, like I talked about at the start, is when we're talking about technique and we're talking about skill. There's two different aspects, right? Technique is the execution of a technique, of a skating stride, of a shooting one timer or a snapshot or something like that. It's the execution of that. When we're talking about skill, we need to have concept. So one of the things that myself as a coach, I barely ever give them solutions. I don't give anybody solutions unless they ask for something after they've already tried it. The reason why I go about it this way is because I want to be able to see what they're thinking. And every time that they do something, I'm going to be right in their ear afterwards, asking them what they did and why they did it. So then I have a basis of understanding what's happening inside their heads, which now gives me a better opportunity to sit there and explain the different variations that they could have, maybe something they didn't think about, and something that they could possibly try the next time. So when we have concept here, once again, here's Gregory Denisenko, and he was at camp in Florida the year before. And he was talking about how he's having trouble picking up the puck on his backhand and quickly getting into an area for a shot. So what we did was we constrained him into an area. This is what the net is. The net is kind of like simplifying, we got a defender there. And the orange cones, he's not going to go around them. They're just trying to really box him in more. And this is a give and go coming off of it. So when we watch Gregory go, it looks nice because he scores. But the part that I'm looking at is, how is that body moving? He's moving in one motion coming out. His head is coming up as soon as he gets it on his forehand coming up. He's already looking for options. Now he's got the availability, and this is the one thing that we're looking for. His stick is available. The puck is available to give the pass. Before he likes to take that extra step, that extra stick handle to get in that open space. But like we've talked about, you can't be there all the time, but your stick is sometimes there. So what we have him here is, as soon as he gets around that net and he's available, he delivers the pass. Now here's something that everybody talks about. His stick's off the ice. I asked him the same question. Why is your stick off the ice before you get the pass reception? He goes, sometimes I'm going through traffic and my stick's on the ice. I'm always getting checked and getting checked and getting checked. then I'm not ready. He goes, if I take my stick off the ice, I'm going to invite the player into me, which means I'm still able to get the stick down if I need to quick. So when he gets this pass, the interesting thing is about this pass, he watches it to about this point right here. So he knows it's coming to his stick, and that right away, before the puck hits his stick, his eyes are up. He's already looking at where that goaltending movement is going. And without trying to change his feet, without trying to change his bottom half to get into a perfect technical position to be able to shoot this puck, he uses his upper hands to be able to get that shot off. And by having that eyes up, he's able to see the goalie movement coming in at this point. And then all of a sudden, bam, there it goes. And so when we were asking him, like, with your eyes up, what did you see? What was happening? He goes, when I saw the puck come into my stick, he goes, the minute my eyes are coming up, I can see the goaltender movement. And he goes, now when my eyes are up, that goaltender could freeze in that position because I could shoot. And another available option would be that once I froze him there, I could actually still slide a pass across the crease if I needed to, just if somebody was open. So these are like open-ended kind of like drills and open-ended questions that we're asking these guys to get them cognitively thinking about what their different options are in the game. And this is going to be something that's going to help them later on. Same players, same guys, again, different arena, obviously, but it's a very simple drill. One guy starts with the puck at the top of the circle. Two guys start with the knee. The thing is you got to get the shot in the net. That's it. Give him a little bit of context, condensing his space, but he still has to be able to get that shot on net. So what we have is on the whistle, he goes, and it's just a quick shot. I'll slow it down here for you as well. But you see, when we were talking, he was watching others that went before him. And the way that we station the players would be kind of like how you'd station the players that are, in a game relatively where they might be. One guy might be a little bit lower, one guy might be in a little slot. You're going to have that minimal space that you have. So when we're asking him, what were you thinking? What was your plan of attack? What were you trying to do? He goes, my first step was to come down towards the dot. And the reason why is then I could bring both defenders in. And if I'm going to do my fake stick handle, he goes, and all of a sudden I might be able to get their sticks to come into that area where that's going to be at. So now I got both sticks there, which is going to open up an area somewhere else. And so what you see here is that fake, he's got one stick coming. The second defender is a little bit late, but he has no room to get outside or go anywhere else. So he's kind of frozen. He's kind of lost in that area. As he pulls back, his head is up the entire time, as you can see from the back, number 14 on his helmet. And he's able to shoot and find in that lane between the stick and the body to get the puck on net. Doesn't score, but it's a scoring opportunity. And that's the one thing that we always talk to the players about. Not always shooting for the goal, but shooting for a scoring opportunity. And then, like he was talking about after, what we discussed was we might have somebody in front of the net. The weak side D might drop down on this play, and we got a rebound chance coming out of it. But when we're looking at it from technical, we could say, okay, his knees kind of bent in and this and this and this. He didn't follow through with the shot. But the part of the motion is like I'm looking at is the cognitively thinking part. All right, he got into that area. He was able to draw two defenders into a space, yet he was still able to try to find space through the defenders, whether that was through the legs, on the outside of the legs, and between the stick. So this is something that we always try to put, and there's the context to it. If it's wide open, where the guy's going to shoot, he might take an extra couple stick handles. He might glide into his shot, and then he might shoot, and then it's over. So in this kind of a situation, he has context where this situation could happen again, and he'll know what to do. He'll understand that it's going to be a quick stick handle to manipulate space and open up space for himself to exploit later. The other thing that we like to talk about is Nikolai Bernstein, great Soviet scientist from back in the 40s and 50s and 60s here. He always talked about repetition without repetition, right? So the one thing that we talked about earlier, we talked about dopamine. Dopamine presents the greatest part for your brain to have a learning experience. It's a great environment for it. But the problem with it is that kids and players, and I gotta admit myself, I get bored. If you're doing something over and over and over again for 5 minutes, like in a station or 5-minute drill, you get bored because it just becomes routine. Well, repetition without repetition is working on the same kind of skills, but always changing it up all the time. So you're having variability within it. And what happens there is that this is going to show that technique is never constant. You can never shoot the puck the same way twice. It's just like a snowflake. It may look the same, but it's not. But when we get into a game, we don't want that player so heavily burdened in the head thinking about the perfect technique that he passes up a shooting opportunity. We don't want him thinking about the perfect skating stride. We want him actually moving into areas. So we want him free of that kind of thinking. So when we do repetition with repetition, without repetition, we understand that technique isn't constant. So we're not going to harp on it. We understand that there's movement variability, right? When we have context, all of a sudden things change. It could be the same drill, but the context could change. You could add a second defender. You could have him move a different way. And you'll see these coming up in the clips. Exploration, very good for creativity because that's going to buy you time. That's going to buy you space. You're going to be able to, exploit everything that you see. But this is also that area where the guys are able to experiment with different things and get that right side of the brain happening. Problem solving, figuring out how to get out of a situation, right? The same thing that happens in a game. We can't get on the ice with them. And as a skill coach, we're not behind the bench. And as a coach on the bench, you can't control what happens out there. So we got to put our practices into an area where it's very cognitive rich in decision-making, problem-solving, variability, and making sure that we don't harp on the little things all the time. This one here, you're going to see Maxim Danishkin and Ilya Nikolaev. There are 1 and 2 centers for the team. Both these guys were drafted into the NHL. And what we do is we map out all their games. So these guys are both centermen. And what they do is they have a high rate of entry as left-handers coming in on the right side. But at the same time, with their high rate of entry, they also have a low rate with the shooting percentage, getting a shot or getting a pass through. So what we did here, a little bit open-ended, we just put them in a couple different scenarios coming in and gaining speed, but they could do whatever they wanted as they came across the blue line. But they had to do it with something real. That was it. You want to do an open hip, you want to do a fake. There was no dictation that you go here, go here, go here. Do something different that you will feel. So what we're watching on this one, and there'll be a couple different nuggets I want to point out to you, but when we're watching here, just catching the pass, coming in. If we go back to the first clip here, if I rewind it just enough, he's catching on his backhand. And as I was looking at it later, he actually tips it with his forehand before he catches on the backhand. There's the tip with the heel of his stick, and then he transfers it to his backhand. The same thing happens again. You watch the blade of his stick open up, touch it, and then it goes. And the next rep, you'll see here, he catches it straight on his backhand. Now, I asked him, I was looking at it, it fascinated me. So I asked him, I go, what's with this backhand catch that you flip it with your forehand into your backhand? And he goes, it's very simple. He goes, 2 things are happening. He goes, 1, it was a weak pass. He goes, and I wanted to get the puck onto my backhand side. I wanted to be able to make that first move off the pass. So he goes, in order to give it momentum, to get myself over there, to get that weight transfer, I had to touch it. I go, okay, well, that makes sense, right? And he goes, secondly, he goes, that pass is coming. If I got a defender coming at me, and he goes, it's happened before. It happened a couple of games ago, he said, against Dynamo Moscow. He goes, that defender was coming at me, and that pass was coming there, and all I did was just give it a little bit extra steam, kept it on my forehand, just touched it forehand to my winger that was driving down the right side. I was like, all right, explanation. You know, I'm not going to sit there and be like, you have to be able to catch it this way. There was a little bit of a tweak there that he thought about on himself. And now me bringing that to the forefront, asking him about it, now it solidifies why he did it. Now I understand. Now he understands even more so, which, you know, you get the cognitive thinking happening there. You're going to see on this zone entry, the thing that really intrigues me the most is his head movement. His head is up, looking, and right before he shoots. Here, there's so many coaches that talk about pass on the tape. And you got a lot of players too, where if it's a bad pass, they forget about it. What I like about this was that it was a continuous motion. He catches it in his skate, follows the puck in, boom, and directly, as soon as it hits his skate, eyes are up. And now he's already in motion. Next clip, Max, bad pass. You see how he tilts his angle of his skate there? Pops it up, and he's directly into a weight transfer into his other leg. All in one motion, and he keeps moving. And then he comes in, does something a little bit different turns, trying to manipulate the offense or the defense that he was coming up against. And Ilya here, once again, a different shot, different angle, different maneuver coming in. Nothing's gone. Here, we add a little bit of context with myself as a coach coming in. Trying to see, a couple extra steps coming in and shooting. The last shot by Nikolaev, we could have said, all right, stopped it, and we talk about a little bit with his maneuver that he went and he shot, he was a lot off balance, right? So we could say that you need to get your hips back in, you need to get your body weight over, you need to get this and you need to get that, and that's true. But the other part about that is that what I really put out in front of him was that, hey, you got the shot off, because he's not taking that shot in a game. And the reason why he's not taking that shot in a game sometimes is because he's not 100% in control at that moment, but the lane for the shot is there. So I want to be able to, I don't want to critique him too much about being, where are you? Why aren't you there? I'm trying to build the confidence to get the shot off, whether you're off balance, on balance, or whatnot. It's that cognitive mobility inside of you that's going to actually happen. So the movement becomes flawless a little bit later on. But the positive part about it is that he actually got the shot off. So a lot of my coaching is I'm quiet with stuff. And here, this last one here, they're looking at, where's the stick? Boom, shoot between the stick and the body. Kind of like this clip before with Denisenko. I opened it up a little bit more, but I wanted to get that vision and get that puck off. Understanding that if they took another step into the middle, all of a sudden I might still be there, or they might have to take another step and another step. So trying to find those areas. And here you're going to see the same repetition, but something just a little bit different. He sees me coming in, he pops back out. And as you see now, myself, I changed my hands. I changed from right-handed or left-hander to a right-hander. So now they're going a little bit 2-on-1. Max, who's in blue, is a playmaker. That's what he likes to do. And he's coming over, he manipulates me, and he finds a space between my body and stick to get the puck over. Ilya uses me. And what happened there was that it was a bad pass, if you want to call it that, off my skate. But he was still able to get the shot off. And here's the other thing too. Guys talking together, finding solutions. I love this clip here with these guys because you can just see the automatic and the fun. You can see the smile on their face. They're understanding what they're supposed to be doing. They're understanding why we're doing it, but they're having fun with each other. And just the body movements between them, it just, as a coach, it excites me because now I get to be inside their head a little bit of what they're thinking. You just see that they're talking, they're moving their bodies, everything else. Try this, try that. And then he just goes. Does a little of an open hip here, a little bit of deception, gets the shot. Nikolaev doing the same thing, a little bit higher, coming up, a little bit of a drop of the shoulder for the pass and gets the shot. If you look at all these clips, their heads are always up. Their eyes are always up looking. Always up looking, boom, gone. Body's still moving. Here, eyes up, looking up, boom, pass. And now I'm not to say that I don't do some teaching. I do some teaching, but I'm not the guy that they're going to mimic. That's the one thing I've always prided myself on as a coach. They have a drill, they have a task, we talk about it, and then they go and do it. I never, ever show the drill for them. I never show the exercise for them. And the reason why is because if I show it, they're going to mimic me. I'm not the one that's playing the games. They are. I'm not the one that has to get better. They do. So what I always do is I make it a point to just give them the task. This is what we're going to work on. And what they have to do is they have to go about it. And then once they do it a few different reps and we start seeing, tendencies, then we're going to go in there and adjust if we need to adjust. Like here, I just come in later and I start talking to them. What I'm doing is I'm asking them questions. What happens in this situation? And one of the things that was happening in this situation was that both of them were coming across the zone, but their shoulders and their hips were turning. So it was like at a 90. So they're going towards the player's bench. And when I was talking to them about that, I go, what are your options coming off of this? What are you thinking about? What can you do? And when you're seeing it now, if we can keep our body moving in an area, but keep our shoulders neutral and our stick neutral, you can see that you have the many different options. You're able to shoot, you're able to pass, you're able to come out, you're able to see everything that you might have decisions on, or you might be able to make another move to free somebody and get a shot. So, and these guys are feeding me this information on the ice as we're going and as we're seeing it. And you can see them in the background. They're trying to mimic some of the motions here and there, looking at it. Okay, I got it. I understand. And then they go off for another route, right? So this is how our relationship is with the players. Like my relationship with them is very athlete centered. So even though it's very cognitive based where I want to get inside of their head, it's also very athlete based because they have to have ownership. They have to have authenticity. They can't mimic me as the coach. This is why I don't do much technique training. And anything that we do on the ice, it's barely ever standalone isolated. And if I do isolated, the guys look at me like I'm punishing them. Like if we have to work on, like if we're going to work on an outside edge or we're going to work on an inside edge or we're going to work at some shooting, they're like, come on, Ted. Why are we doing this now? Did we do something wrong? I'm like, no, let's just try to figure out this solution. Then let's add it quickly. So we might, when I say we don't do isolated, remember, we do game-based stuff. We do context-rich things, and we constrain it sometimes for that. But at the same time, if I do see a problem that's reoccurring over and over and over again, I will take that player, not the group, that player, if he's having the issue, and work on it isolated real quick, a couple repetitions so that they can be able to feel it. Maybe it is the elbow that's not up in time. Maybe the hand's locked on the hip. Maybe the weight isn't shifted over right away. We're going to work on that quick, but he's going to get pushed right back into a contextual drill so that he's able to see it and be able to use it instantly. And most of the time, almost every single practice we end, and this is going to be with our MHLB team. This is our under 18 team. Their playoffs start next week, which at this time of this views, it will be at that time. So we had a full practice with them. The practices you've been seeing before, these are like our 30 minutes or 45-minute practices that we're working on, and we don't have time to play games sometimes with them. But here we are working on a simple drill, simple game. You got two nets. I call it the Buffalo Sabres. I saw the Sabres doing this a couple of years ago. Ice Hockey Systems actually posted it. But I made a rule change in this. So what my rule change was, you have the two jokers. And usually we like to put players in the positions where the jokers are. As you can see, there's a joker, that's myself. And there's my assistant coach and / translator here, Anton. Usually I like to put players there, but because we didn't have, this was just a half a team, we stayed in those positions to be. But you can score on either net. The only rules there's 2 rules. One rule is that if you lose the puck, or you gain possession of the puck, you must pass to a joker, either one of us. The second rule was, because we want to work on one-timers, was that every shot you take has to be a one-timer from the forehand side of the one-timer or from a traditional one-timer backing up, right? So what you see here is, it's a little bit sloppy at times and stuff like that. But when we go back and we look at this tape with the guys, we're looking at, are we getting open? Yes or no? Are we finding the spaces? Yes or no? What are we focusing on? Are we forming our triangles that we need? And then, for example, on this one here, he's getting into that spot. And what I really liked about him getting into the spot was that he knew where the net was. His body was just a little bit off timed there, but he gets into that position where he wants to be able to get the shot and he's in the right area. He just timed it wrong and it flips off the backside of his stick, but he recognized the situation and he jumped. I think this one here, we have a guy that's going to drive the net. He's going to find a lane. He's going to drive the net. Boom, one-timer, in. So it's taking skills like this, instead of just working on them in isolation, they're able to actually figure out how to find lanes, how to find each other, and how to communicate. And the best part about that is, like when we talked back about our grid cells, our head cells, and our place cells, they're starting to understand the different areas of the rink that they're going to be able to get these shots. And we like to keep our nets and everything else more into that game style areas, because it's going to be that placement where they're going to be at in the game more than not. So we want them to always be able to relate back into the environment, so when they actually get into the game, it doesn't change. And at the end of the day, when we start thinking about everything, the favorite quote is, there's only so many ways that we're going to be able to keep getting bigger and quicker, faster and stronger. You see the game, and it's really quickened up, especially with the different rule changes and everything else, the different trainings that the guys are doing off ice, the nutrition, the sleep, the way they're taking care of their bodies. It's getting faster. But the one area that we are lacking in is that we're lacking between the brain. And that's going to be the next dimension that we have, because if you can get a player that can think the game and then add the skill into it later, it's unbelievable. And to make a note is that when we look at our youngest kids, if they're smart, they're sponges. The more that we can get them cognitively thinking, the more that we can get them making more decisions, seeing the game in a different way, we can always work on technique and tweak it as they get older and as they need it. It doesn't have to be a step by step process. You don't have to learn how to skate properly and then handle the puck properly and then shoot the puck, and then all of a sudden now they can play. It's not that way. They can play. They're going to be able to play. They play on the pond. They play in the streets. They play everywhere. Let them play. Let them have context. Let their brains work. You as a coach jump in, ask them valuable questions that make them think. Put them in situations that make them think. Get them working there. And always take out the technique when they need it here and there. But most importantly, if you're going to take a technique approach, put them inside of a situation that's going to always change. The variables are always going to look different. And it's not going to always be the same repetition over and over again. We want to keep that dopamine flowing. We want that BNF happening. We want that learning environment to be optimal for each player that we come in contact with. And the technique later on, as their bodies grow and everything else, it's always going to change. You're going to get stiffer, the biomechanics. It depends on what's going to happen with that player. So it's never going to be a cure-all, and it's never going to be an end-all. It always changes technique. So make sure that you're engaging the brain and then working technique second into what happens with the brain and their decision-making. I hope this was informative. I appreciate you guys for listening, and hope to do this again with you guys soon. Take care, stay healthy, and good luck with your teams.